When I say the word grog, you're probably thinking about pirates or maybe sailors in the 18th century. And grog is a fascinating topic. It is a drink that the sailors drank on board ship while they were at sea, generally far away from their home ports. This is a really fascinating topic when we dig into the provisions that sailors had in the 18th century. Most of the sailors in the 18th century, their provisions were based on what was given to the sailors in the Royal Navy, because that was the biggest navy of the time period and the one that was probably most important. And so civilian ships and even ships like in the later United States Navy were based on the concepts that happened there in the Royal Navy. The Royal Navy had very particular regulations about how they were going to feed and how they were going to clothe their sailors. And feeding them was very difficult. Men might be at sea for 6 months or a year. And so feeding them was extremely important. And what were they going to drink when they were on board ship? Even water is very difficult to come by in the 18th century. Good, clean drinking water. People are drinking standard surface water, water out of the rivers, water out of the lakes. This isn't purified in any way, and in a lot of circumstances, it was just plain unhealthy to drink in any way. And so things like beer and other beverages are important for the standard public health of people. So most people drank some kind of very weak or just normal kind of a beer or a wine just because it was the safest thing to drink. On any particular ship, they're going to have a lot of regular drinking water put on board right at the beginning. But the problem is the water is put into standard wooden barrels that they use over and over again. They're very easily contaminated and very difficult to clean out. And they didn't even know kind of the best way to clean them out in the time period. And so they would put thousands of gallons of water on board of a ship, but within a week or two, it starts to grow things like algae or bacteria inside of those barrels. So that water is not only unpalatable, but downright unhealthy to drink. If the water is unhealthy to drink, then we have to give those sailors something else to drink. And standard beer was that drink, especially when you were fairly close to home. A typical sailor's ration of the time period might be something like a pound of salt beef and a pound of ship's biscuit, plus 1 gallon of beer a day. That was the typical kind of ration. The beer that they were typically serving in that middle of the 18th century context, it did not have very many hops in it. And so it would go bad, especially in the high temperatures that you might see in places that you're sailing to, say the West Indies. That beer might be good for 3 or 4 weeks, but you're going to run out of beer, especially at a gallon a man per day. So a small frigate might have 200 men on board, 200 gallons a day. 10 days, 2,000 gallons. 100 days, 20,000 gallons. How are you going to have that much beer on board? It's just not possible, and it's going to get spoiled. So the Navy needed another solution, especially for sailors that were going far abroad. If you're going overseas, you're going to be spending anything like 2 or 3 months away. You're going to need something more than just regular beer. And so they came up with the idea of using local alcoholic beverages for wherever they're at. If the sailors were, say, in the Mediterranean, they might be served wine instead of their beer. But in other places, wine wasn't available, beer might not be available, and so they went to other kinds of more spirituous liquors. Right there at the beginning of the 18th century, Great Britain gets a toehold into the West Indies and really starts to expand in that area. And the classic drink in the West Indies was rum. They had a lot of rum because of the molasses. Sugar was the cash crop of that area, and molasses was a byproduct. It was what was left over after you made your sugar. You would take this molasses, you would distill it, and you would have this very rough textured rum that was left over. The Navy would buy this rum, which would never go bad really if you keep it in small barrels, and they would serve that out to their sailors instead of their beer ration. So instead of a gallon of beer, you got basically a cup a full, say, 8 ounces of rum per day. You would get that split into 2 rations. So a half of that cup in the morning, and a half later on in the day. There was a big problem in that sailors would keep that ration back, maybe for 2 or 3 days, and then they would get roaring drunk, and it would be a major problem on board ship. So the Navy had to come up with a solution to that, and there was the Vice Admiral Vernon. And he was a man who didn't think that the sailors should probably have any rum ration at all, that alcoholic beverages weren't really a good thing on board ship, but he had to come up with some way to fix that. And in 1740, he came up with orders to basically dilute their rum ration. So take that rum ration and add in 4 times as much water. They will have then this diluted mixture. It will make the water safe, and they won't get nearly as drunk, and so we will have solved our problem. The sailors didn't think this was necessarily a very good idea, and so they gave that drink a special name. They named it after the admiral. They didn't call it Vernon, but they named it after the kind of cloak that the admiral wore. He was apparently a cheapskate, and he wore a special boat cloak, or his standard boat cloak, instead of what the sailors thought this vice admiral should wear, which would be fancy gold lace. Instead, he wore one out of very inexpensive fabric, a fabric called grog. It had these kind of ribs, and it was just basically the cheapest heavy fabric available. So they called this new drink grog. If we dig into Admiral Vernon's direct orders here that create grog, there's some really interesting stuff. It starts off with the classic order of the 18th century, whereas it manifestly appears to be the unanimous opinions of both captains and surgeons that the pernicious custom of the seamen drinking their allowance of rum in drams, and often at once, is attended with many fatal effects to their morals as well as to their health. He goes on to make sure that the sailors do get their proper ration, and that it is the full ration, because he knows it's quite common for sailors to get defrauded in this time period, generally by the purser. So there is a special barrel set aside on deck. There is always an officer there to watch that the exact amounts get measured, the proper amount of rum and the proper amount of water, and then it gets divvied out to the sailors so that they get exactly their proper ration. There's another part to this grog story, and it has to do with scurvy. Now, scurvy is one of the worst kind of diseases for sailors in this time period. It is a deficiency in vitamin C. When you're at sea and you're eating a very restricted diet for 2 or 3 or 4 months, your body will finally run out of vitamin C, and it will start to literally fall apart. Your hair will come out, your teeth will come out, you will get this black legs, and it is just a horrific disease to go through. And many sailors died of scurvy in the 18th century. Coming up with the solution for scurvy was something people were trying to figure out for a long time. A lot of doctors were working on this. Dr. Lind was working on this problem. He was a naval surgeon in the middle of the 18th century. He wrote a whole treatise on scurvy, and he was pointing to a couple possible solutions, and one of those was lime juice and lemon juice. He didn't actually say that was the perfect solution. He said it was one of the possible solutions, but most of the other ones that he pointed out wouldn't actually work. The British Navy finally figured this out about 45 years later. In 1795, they actually mandated a lime juice or a lemon juice ration for their sailors to fight off this concept of scurvy. Unfortunately, many times the lime juice or lemon juice would have been boiled, destroying the vitamin C that was in it. That's too bad. Regardless, this lime juice and lemon juice gets added to the sailors' rations, and it gets connected with grog. The lime juice or the lemon juice goes into the grog, probably because they wanted to make sure those sailors took that ration, and the only way they could make sure was to put it in the grog that they knew the sailors wouldn't miss. This is from 1724. This is John Knott's Cooks and Confectioners Dictionaries. So about 15 years before Vernon made his order about grog. Here is a punch for chambermaids. Take a quart of water, 1/4 of a pint of lime juice. Squeeze in also the juice of a Seville orange and a lemon. Put in 6 ounces of fine sugar, strain it all through a strainer 3 times till it is very clear, then put in a pint of brandy and 1/2 pint of white wine. So we've got water, we've got lime, lemon, and orange juice, we've got a little brandy, a little wine, but essentially it's a mixture like brandy and some water along with sugar and along with citrus fruit. This is normal kind of a punch in the time period. Grog is this simplified and no sugar and no citrus. So let's make some grog exactly like Admiral Vernon ordered. We've got 2 different recipes here, or let's say a recipe and additions that he suggests. We've got water, we've got rum, and the suggestion of the addition that if the sailors saved their money, they could add lime and they could add sugar. Remember that on board ship, they would do this in large quantities. They would do it for, say, half of the sailors at a time. So they would have a large barrel, the head would be knocked out of it. It was the barrel made for mixing this stuff. We're just gonna make a very small quantity, 1 single ration of it. So I've got the ration here, we've got rum, and this ration would be split twice a day. He gives it for the whole day, but it would be split in half. So we have a 1/2 cup of rum and we have 2 cups of water. And we are gonna mix these 2 together, and that will give us a 4-to-1 mixture of rum to water. Here's our 4-to-1 mixture. We can give this a quick try. It is watered down rum. It really isn't, it doesn't taste very strong at all. It's just got kind of a rum hint to it. So you can really see why the sailors wanted to make fun of this drink. They came up with a disparaging term for it. We're making fun of this cheapskate admiral, basically. So, you know, you can definitely tell, I mean, I wouldn't want to have to drink this full tumbler and, you know, go up on top of a mast, but it definitely does take the bite out of this, and it keeps me from, you know, secreting back my rum ration 3 or 4 days, collecting it together, and then just having it all at once and really causing a bunch of havoc on board ship. Now, right here in the order, Vernon does say that the sailors should save their money and add something to this to make it more palatable, to make it more fun. So we have his suggestion here. We've got a lime. We're gonna take it, we're gonna cut it up into a couple of little slices here, and we will add a little bit of lime juice to it. And he does say lime, even though lemons are one of the possible additions. And then we've got some of our sugar. We don't need to add a ton here. I wonder if the sailors ever got a chance to have it like his suggestion, but we will at least get a chance to try it like that. And yes, much better. It does not take a lot to move the needle on a drink like this, where plain watered down rum, add a little bit of sugar, add a little bit of lime to it, and it certainly makes it a much more palatable drink. So what do you do with a drunken sailor? Well, if you take Admiral Vernon's advice, you take his rum and you water it down so he doesn't get drunk.